Thank you so much for coming down. Sure. We had a lot of requests from clients. There was starting to get noise on the street about this childcare. Okay, it sounds like a huge credit. I think it's something that a lot of people can take advantage.
Sure. Yeah.
So I put together from our team. I put together from from different departments, so we can have a good understanding. And we actually would like to relate it to our clients too. So we hope to take together some questions and answers.
Sure, my absolute pleasure. Yeah.
So we're going in the conference room and
yeah.
Hi, my name is Frady Isaac-Collins. We're here sitting down to get an overview of what the childcare credit is all about. So we're here with Yechiel Steinberg, who opened Perquity, a company that intermediates between providers and companies to help them with their credits and to get the funds over to the providers. We're here with Aaron Halder from our company, who does the sales, and he has a very good idea of what our clients are looking for. And we're here with Aaron Berman from operations, who will help us set this up. Yechiel, can you give us in simple terms an overview of what this is all about?
Sure. So this is, in very simple terms, is a credit that the government gives for employers who pay for the child care of their employees. New York State gives a 50% credit, 50% of the amount spent on child care. They'll give you back as a tax credit up to $500,000. The federal government also gives the 50% on top of the state. So that's a combined 100% of tax credit that an employer can receive for the amounts spent on childcare of their employees. The federal credit has certain limitations. It might not apply to every company, but even if we are not able to utilize the federal credit, you can still use the state credit plus business expenses on the federal level, which combined you can see tax savings for at least 75% of the amount spent on the childcare. Of companies will be able to see tax savings 100% of the amount spent. They'll get back as a tax credit.
Thank you. What do you feel like? What problems does this solve for families, for employees, for businesses?
So the childcare cost in the United States of America is crisis level. People pay average cost for a child per year for childcare is around $15,000 to $20,000. You know, someone has 2 kids, childcare age, 3 kids, it easily almost wipes out the entire paycheck of an employee these days. There's government funding for people who qualify as low income, but that's even low income people have a significantly hard time to gain access to these fundings. And if you earn a little bit too much, you're not eligible. And this is an amazing opportunity that just came about to start helping these families start breathing financially by removing this burden of childcare costs that these families face.
And what changed now?
Okay.
That this came up for conversation.
So President Trump signed into law the very beautiful bill in July 2025 that provided 3 major enhancements to this credit. This is not a new credit. The federal credit already exists in 2002, I believe. It's called the Employer Provided Child Care Tax Credit. It used to be 25% of the amount spent, up to $125,000. For obvious reasons, this was not nearly enough to motivate employers to actually do it. Government records show that the companies who used this credit was like literally a few hundred companies use this credit in the entire United States of America.
Wow.
Yeah. So a few politicians from both sides, Republicans and Democrats, came together and they pushed hard to include in this new tax bill that President Trump signed in July to make three major enhancements to the credit. Number one, they increased the credit from 25% to 50%. They increased the cap from $125,000 to $600,000.
Wow.
And they opened up the credit to use a middleman, a childcare intermediary, because until now the only option a company had is to sign a contract directly with the childcare provider and pay them. Now, if a company had one employee with one childcare provider, that's doable. But what if a company has 10 employees, 20, 100 employees, right? Imagine having to communicate, contract with, make payments to all these different providers each month. Making sure that the child was enrolled for this month, not enrolling. It just could easily lose control of the situation, right? Obviously, so there was impractical credit. So that's why they pushed it into the law. They included it into this enhancement, this third option, that companies could just reach out to one intermediary, sign up with them, sign an illegal contract with them, and they handle all the contracts and all the payments to all the different providers, whether it's one provider or 100 providers. So this is the three enhancements that the federal government made this year, effective January 1st, 2026. New York State also has this credit for a while, but when it comes to the definitions of what is childcare and how to contract with the childcare, they follow the federal rules. So when the enhancement was made on the federal level, it also enhanced the state level credit, not the percentage and the caps, but at least the option of utilizing a middleman. So, which is why I had multiple childcare companies actually reached out to me after July, after this bill was passed, to see if I can help them with the rules and regulations. Which is at that point I realized really the only option going forward is to actually establish a intermediary that stands in between employers and the childcare providers, and this is what perpetuity is all about.
You come in as an intermediary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this tie into payroll, this child tax credit?
Excellent question. So one of the complications that exist in this credit is that the payments that an employer makes to the childcare providers is considered fringe benefits to the employees, because the employer is paying to the provider on behalf of their employee. So it's a benefit to the employee, and fringe benefits are taxable wages to the employee. However, fortunately enough, there's an exemption for the first $7,500. So this is another enhancement that was made this year, effective 2026. It used to be just $5,000. They increased that to $7,500. So an employee who receives childcare benefits from their employee, they could exempt the first $7,500 from taxable income. But the amounts over $7,500 has to be recorded on the employee's payroll as regular W-2 wages and subject to income and payroll taxes. So this is where the payroll comes into this whole thing, because this is not simply a benefit like health insurance that are tax-free. This is a taxable benefit, but there is an option to choose to exempt the first $7,500. In order for an employee to qualify for that exemption, they must confirm that their spouse also works. So it must be both spouses work in order to qualify for that exemption. Meaning, if a parent works, they have a child at home, and their spouse, for whatever reason, is not employed at the moment, the employer is allowed to provide the child care for this child and take a credit. But at that situation, the entire benefit will be taxable income to the employee. So this is where payroll comes into the picture, because these payments that the employer makes on a monthly basis has to now be converted into something that could be used, it could be booked into the payroll for each employee. So this is part of our system that we convert the monthly payments into your weekly or bi-weekly or monthly payrolls. For each payroll that you run, you get a separate payroll report. And in that report, you have all the information needed for that payroll, whether the name of the employee, and the wages, whether it's taxable or non-taxable. Both have to be reported on the wages as you go on. So that's where this is where the payroll comes in, and we hope to eventually. At this current moment, it works through a download from our system and an upload to the payroll system. But the goal eventually is to do full integration. Seamless integration, and where Perquity and MegaPay will become one thing, and the employer is just going to sit back and watch the system go through each month without doing anything.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Are there any limitations to which employers are eligible?
The federal credit is a credit to virtually every employer who pays for their childcare for their employee. That's literally the requirement on the federal level. There's no additional requirements. However, the credit might be subject to, like I said, the federal credit might be limited by certain credit limitations, meaning it might be limited depending on the taxable income level of the company, but there's no specific requirement, other requirements other than just being a company, being an employer who pays for your employees' childcare. Whether you're a C corporation, an S corporation, an LLC, sole proprietorship, all companies qualify. So that's the federal credit. On the state credit, obviously each state has their own requirements, which basically requires, so the New York State requires, in addition to what I just said, which basically means just paying for childcare, is to be a company that is subject to New York State taxes, which means it does not necessarily have to be physically located in New York State. A New Jersey company, for some reason, is subject to New York State taxes, and there's a lot of companies who are depending on their what is called nexus. It's a tax concept, which is beyond the scope of this conversation. But a lot of companies out of New York State might be subject to New York State. So they could qualify for the credit, provided that they pay for childcare, which is physically located in New York State. So to recap, to be eligible for the New York State credit, you have to be subject to New York State taxes, plus you have to pay for childcare located in New York State.
Okay, so you answered my next question was if the provider needs to be in New York, but yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a different question.
Sure.
I just had it. I spoke to a client who is signing up now for health insurance for his company.
Mm-hmm.
But I know by group health insurance, an example, the employer can't have it just for himself. It has to be offered to at least one or more other employees. By this childcare, can the employer take it just for himself? Does he have to offer it to employees as well? And then the second part of my question would be, for self-employed people who don't have any employees, are they still eligible to take the benefit just for themselves?
So this is an excellent and actually very important question. So first of all, when it comes to what you mentioned, like from health insurance, on health insurance, there's a group requirement. There has to be group health insurance. So that doesn't exist over here. There's no group requirement in childcare. This credit is designed simply for employer who pays for the employee childcare. Now, the employer is considered, if they're self-employed, they themselves could be treated as an employee, right? If they pay for their own child's childcare, if there's no other employee in the company, that's perfectly fine. It's considered employer-provided childcare, and the employer will be eligible for the credit. So that's for a self-employed person. Now, if there's more people in the company, the employer cannot discriminate in his or her favor. He can't just choose himself to receive the credit and not provide it to the companies. It has to be offered in a way that does not discriminate in favor of highly compensated employees or owners. So if you're the only, so just to recap, if you're the only person in the company, take it for yourself and enjoy it. If you have more staff in your company, you must offer it in a way that does not discriminate in favor of highly compensated employees and the owner. Which means if you just have two additional or one or two additional employees, you most likely have to offer it to two or three people in order to not violate this part of the law. And you might not qualify if you just take it for yourself and you leave your two employees out of it. You might be disqualified from the credit, so that's a huge problem, and you must offer it to everyone. If you have a large team and you are able to classify your staff in a bona fide classification that is not set up just simply to discriminate, meaning you have your sales department, your field department, classifications that are meant just from a natural business point of view. You could designate certain departments that you feel there's a bigger need for them to receive that credit, and this exclude the other departments. However, there will be the exclusion cannot also be in a way that you're including, let's say, just your executive team who are highly compensated employees, and you're leaving out all the lower paid employees. It has to be in a more favorable and fair manner spread. So these are the rules of discrimination, which when a company deals with a lot of employees, they must make sure that they don't go against the discrimination rules.
Right. Discrimination is a whole other topic that having the HR compliance.
Of course,
So what you're basically saying is the employees don't have to actually accept it, but he has to offer it to them.
Exactly.
And then the same thing if he's self-employed and he doesn't have any other employees or a small business.
Correct.
Then they're still
Then
eligible.
obviously there's nothing. It's not discriminating because they are the only person in the company. Yes.
Yeah.
However.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to the discrimination rules, there's two components in this whole childcare credit. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, there's the credit that employers receive, which has the discrimination rules that I just described, and then also for employers to receive the first $7,500 tax-free, there's this whole separate set of rules and regulations of discrimination, which in that case, much stricter rules. There's like testing that has to happen throughout the year, and if you don't comply with those requirements, what ends up happening is that the highly compensated employees and the owner cannot receive that $7,500 tax-free, and they have to take it as a taxable wage. However, those who do not qualify, those who are not designated as highly compensated employees, which is around $160,000 in the current year. This is what it means, highly compensated from the government's perspective for this particular regulation. So what happens is if the company does not comply with the discrimination rules, the highly compensated will have to pick up the entire thing as taxable, and the non-highly compensated could continue to receive the non-taxable portion. However, when it comes back to the employer credit side, in that case, it's extremely important that the employer complies with the discrimination rules, because otherwise, his credit will not be. He won't be eligible for the credit.
Is there a simple way somebody can check if he qualifies for this child tax credit?
A simple way. Yeah, I wish that there would be a simple way. Unfortunately, with the tax rules, there's no such a thing as simple. But like I said, I try to provide as much information as possible on my website on Equity. I have a lot of FAQs over there that answer a lot of questions, and additionally, I have a whole page describing in detail the entire tax credit with all the just going into deeply into the tax code. But just stepping back, and this is a very but if you do step back, it is a very simple tax credit. Employer pays for childcare, gets back a tax credit. But like I said, once you start different scenarios and different situations, it does become complicated. And someone should definitely reach out to a professional. They can reach out to people who specialize in fringe benefits, payroll providers, accountants, and they can also reach out to my company, Equity.
I have a follow-up question what Mr. Hollander asked about the self-employed people. Does owner need to be on payroll at least somewhat in order to be eligible for this credit?
No.
They can just create a W-2 just for this?
Exactly, and not only that, I mean, if they don't want to do a W-2, so for example, if they are a partner or a sole proprietorship, meaning they just simply themselves in a single member LLC, they don't need a W-2. So in order to record these fringe benefits as taxable, they'll have to record it either on the K-1, which is in lieu of a W-2, or if they prefer, they could. I mean, they're definitely allowed to do a W-2, which is sometimes it could be much more practical, because if you do it on a W-2, they can run through their payroll system, which goes on an ongoing basis. Otherwise, they'll have to do it at year end on their K-1, which means they might be hit with a tax balance they wouldn't otherwise have. So it's really up to you. If you're a partner in a partnership or a sole proprietorship, you have the option to either take it as a K-1 distribution or a W-2 payroll. If you're a shareholder in an S corporation or a C corporation, you have to do a W-2.
It must be a W-2.
It must be a W-2. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we covered most of it. Any other final questions?
Let me just do a quick recap in the plain language, without understanding all the tax code. So essentially what you're saying is the employer provides childcare for the employees and they get it back. In other words, it's a free raise that they give to the employees.
That's exactly it, yes. So some people have asked me, what do employers gain from it? Employees gain, obviously, simple. They pay childcare until now, going forward they don't. So, but what does the employer get? He pays and gets it back, so he's not gaining zero. And for that, I say each employer, most employers I came in contact with were very enthusiastic to be able to provide this unbelievable free benefit to the employees. Employees today's days are underpaid. Cost of living is sky high. Most people struggle to make ends meet, and this is a way to give them back cash in their pocket by freeing up their expenses for not having to pay childcare anymore. It helps employer to retain employer that just puts onto their job description that they offer free childcare. Obviously, they have a much easier time to find good talent. It helps with retention. Employees, someone who struggles with employee turnover because the pay is too low. You add this benefit, and it just does amazing things to attract and keep talent. And just stepping back and looking at this just from a human to human perspective, just the ability to be able to give to eliminate this huge financial burden for employees to do the job by itself, and it does it for a lot of companies.
Amazing, thank you so much. If anyone has any more questions, they can check you out on perquity.com and you have there everything.
Yeah, perquity.com. There's a ton of information over there. There's also a phone number over there. There's the email address. There's this contact button that someone who wants to reach out, they can submit an inquiry over there. So there's a lot of ways to contact us.
Amazing, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.